Katrina, I think we're good to start, so we'll kick it over to you and have to take us through today.
All right. I guess first order of business is to review the minutes from our last meeting in September, and do I have a motion to approve those? Is that right?
You got it. A motion to approve minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Aye.
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 Okay, motion passed. And that's it, and I turn over to the scheduling, Ms. Shaw.
There is a list of dates in your packet for 2024 proposed dates. So if you could just take a look at those, let me know if that schedule will work for you, and then we'll just send, since we have several missing commission members, I'll send it out to them, and then we'll just let you know in December, or I guess it's a little late in November, but you know, so I'll just let you know in December if that's going to work for everyone. So it'd be the third Tuesday of odd number of months is what our schedule had been. So
Appreciate that. Way ahead.
that's
First come, first served. You write it down, you can't do anything else. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Sharon. Next on the agenda, Bryce, report on strategic plans.
Perfect. So I just wanted to give an update on where we're at with our strategic plan entering 2024. This has been an exciting process. Again, as most of y'all know, I joined the library in February, so we're coming up on that 1 year mark, and really trying to, the emphasis this entire last year is to raise our vision as an admin team from immediate current things that require a lot of time and attention, and get our vision back on the horizon for the Orem Public Library. There's a lot that has gone into this. I put a few of them here. Linda specifically has done a great job of leading out with our staff, our internal staff on our mission statement, vision statement, our cultural values, and some of the strategic plans of the specific areas or the specific teams. Recently, the city completed a city employee survey as we reviewed in that September meeting. We got really good feedback from our employees, what was challenging for them, what they were really working through, and what they were looking for from me and from our admin team. The city is working through a study right now across all departments called the MGT study, or that's the name of our consultant, to look at, again, it was staff hierarchy, technology, and processes within each department to make sure that we are best serving our residents and that we have clear duties, that staff have what they need to be successful. We did a lot of library tours, I'll take you through those, but over the last 8 weeks, our admin team with several other members, probably what, Sean, 15 of our total staff across the 3 days, went and toured several libraries up and down the Wasatch Front to look at other best practices, to see what brand new libraries are doing, libraries of different sizes. And so, again, those types of opportunities are just fascinating to bring back and learn from, and I'll go through a lot of that today. We're in the process of working through a facilities master plan. As you know, the current city center is under construction. If you saw that out on the corner of Center and State, that means that our little breezeway right here is going to be very different. It's going to be a brand new entrance that will be really close to the buildings. And so we want to make sure that we have a facility master plan in place to support the physical needs of the building. Desks and spaces and community spaces and stacks management. So we're working through that right now. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of our identity and our goals and metrics to serve. And so we've taken, as an admin team, all of these things, or trying to put it into a total strategic plan that each of our staffing decisions and processes and goals can go towards. Sometimes if we run with the MGT study for 6 months, and then the next thing, the employee survey comes out, and then we're going over to, they ripped off our south doors and we have to redo that. It would feel like a little chaotic. And so our goal is to say, this is what's coming in for the next 3 years. Let's get it all in the same place. A little bit of my personal goals and priorities through this, and really a reflection of our admin team. We wanted to make sure that we wrestled control of our library's narrative. We are doing amazing things there. We have incredible librarians. We have a lot of buy-in from our community, and we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to share that message and to invite people to participate. We wanted to make sure we are moving in a way that our staff feel empowered and they feel the buy-in of their administrative team, that they see their fingerprints all over what we are creating here. I know sometimes, I would say every organization, you have an admin team, and then you have your boots on the ground that are getting the work done that can feel frictiony sometimes. And so, again, shout out to Linda on what she's been able to create to say our staff are going to be the ones to deliver on our mission statement and our values and deliver that up to us as an admin team. We want to make sure that we are constantly creating and communicating our value to our Orem residents. I think this goes back a little bit to the narrative, but really to say, do they understand who we are and what we're doing and what's available to them here? And then finally, we have both the collection that we want to develop, but the access to the collection. Having books is only as good as people knowing that we have the books and able to get the books and do that, and then books and media and digital resources. And so focusing not just on the collection, but the access to the collection. So, as part of this, and Linda, you were able to present on the mission statement last time, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Great. I put it here just in case, but we inspire lifelong learning, create enriching opportunities, and strengthen our communities, our three-pronged approach as a library. In addition to that, though, we've had a couple of chances to build a motto, and Linda, were you the author of this? I don't want to overgive credit to you here. Was it you or someone in your meeting?
It was multiple. It stems from wanting to not be focused on things that distract us from our work. And we wanted it to be something that you could say simply to each other so that if somebody was like, oh, this is happening, it was like, yeah, but that we don't need to worry about that. And Mike had mentioned, what was the show?
Buffy.
Buffy, okay. So many years ago,
Some masterwork.
Buffy used the word Google as a verb. And so we now use the word Google as a verb.
Google it.
And so we said, well, let's make library a verb. So that's where we got the model from. So you wouldn't have to quote the mission statement, you could just say, yeah, but remember our goals, we do library. So you never forgot that. Yeah. So that was the idea behind that, just to be like, let's get focused on what we need to do.
So as we work through, thank you. As we work through both of those, that sort of takes us to our library tours that we've done. And these have been really great experiences for me, because we load up our team in a van and we drive to a different library and go and we meet with their staff and talk with them. And we get together afterwards and really discuss and talk about what we saw and what we liked. On the left are the municipal libraries that we went to. I think the first one was end of September, and then we wrapped up our other ones about 3 hours ago. And we are now sort of done with this. But we had a chance to go to, again, communities like ours, like Provo, Springville in Spanish, very similar challenges, maybe smaller. Salt Lake, very similar prominence, but obviously a larger city. We really liked Park City, and we did a outside eyes tour of Orem Public Library as well. We went through as a patron to try to see it. So we started there to say, well, what does a patron see, or what do they feel when they're doing this? In addition to the very similar, we wanted to be stretched by things that overlapped with what we did, but maybe weren't exact. And so we went to the Fulton Library at UVU. Their collection is very different, not even similar to what we do at all. But they have a ton of space for people to be there and study or do group projects. And we really like that, to say, if we want people to come and stay here, let's look at what they did. What kind of furniture, what kind of layouts did they have? The Harold B. Lee Library. We went to Barnes & Noble and wandered around. They had some great ideas. Their goal is to make sure you touch and pick up a book, because when you touch it, you're going to buy it. And for us to say, okay, that's creating access. And so how do we get those books out of Spine Out and into people's hands quicker and easier? So we looked at a lot of their shelving and their tables and the shapes of their bookshelves that like pull you in and make you feel cozy. There's some great stuff there. We were at the UVU Student Center and the Wilkinson Center. Again, places of being and existing, and how do they make those students feel comfortable and what we could take from them. We even stopped by Sun River Garden, which is like an event space, and it's also a merchandising space. And so how do you transition in and out of a merchandising space and an event space quickly? Obviously, the notes that we took from the garden were probably the shortest list of applicable notes, but we wanted to challenge our staff and hear their ideas. Again, things
I don't know, maybe you could add some plants.
Oh, I mean, cool. You're speaking to my heart, but we gotta make the connection first. We have a beautiful courtyard. I love our courtyard. And Salt Lake City, the downtown library, I don't know if y'all have been there. Have any of y'all been there?
Yeah.
The gardens are the first thing you see. It's massive and it's impactful, and so they use them for programming. They have the seed libraries, they have the big conservation, education pieces. I mean, it's, we'll chat at budget season, but I'd love to share some ideas with y'all on the city council. So things, again, we were looking for. Half of them were guided tours. We met with their staff, we talked to them, we collaborated and shared ideas. Half of it, we wandered around and sort of snooped through their library to see it like a patron. Took hundreds of pictures and pages of notes, hours of conversation, looking at some of these different things here. Again, all part of that strategic plan. And I think one of my favorite takeaways from that was the idea that, you know, maybe as we were just trying to set our direction for 2024, we were thinking, what's the right way and what's the wrong way to do it? Doing this, we saw there's 30 ways to do this, and each of them are going to be right for their community or their population or their goals. And so it gave us permission to say we might not be the best academic reference library, but that's okay because that's not who we're trying to be. Or they had a ton of community space, but that's because they're attached to the high school, so they have a lot more teens than we might have here. Ours might look a little bit different. And so again, it was just fun to give ourselves permission to not look for the perfect example. Lorraine.
Just as having been through a similar process, having another library employees come into your library, you can get some really good things from other librarians that it just hits them and you're going, oh, I didn't see that. So that's just another thing, is to have other, you know, from Park City or whatever, some of their people come in here.
And we
Can I,
oh, please.
may I say something also? So, and I just want to say to Matthew, right, I mean, when I interviewed people for this commission, the thing that stuck out was your connection to the high school. And I felt like you would bring a lot of that youth perspective and need to these discussions, you know, because you're in it every day. So anyway, I like what you're saying, and you're saying we need to be there for our community, and like Lorraine has some great experience. And Katrina, anyway, I think we've got great resources, community resources, resident resources to kind of really match up with what you guys are trying to do too.
And I really appreciate, instead of just sitting in a room and saying, what are we gonna do? Go out and see the 30
Yeah.
rooms.
Yeah.
And I think you're just, like, I'm watching this presentation and I'm getting my juices flowing here, my thoughts. I don't know, I hope you're doing that, Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I might, and hearing that, we've got hundreds of pictures. I picked 10 pictures today with a little, you know, to show the process of like, we saw this, we liked it, this is what we're thinking here. If y'all would, I'm glad to share with you the other 100 or 200 pictures and just have a slideshow. You can sort of see what we saw and vice versa. If you have something, I love conferences. I love going and learning in a classroom lecture series from other people. A little bit. It is fine. I understand why we do conferences. I love these tours. The energy and hearing these people at their library just tell you about everything just fills me with energy. They love their library. They love their processes. And so I think to your point, we both came away from that. In fact, I would say Scott from Spanish Fork, I think we've emailed several times since then, as he's asked us, or we would bring up feedback, say, well, how do you do that with this? And he's like, I never thought about that. And now we're back and forth, and I think a little bit better for it. So we looked at each of these things to pull into our next step. And with where I'm comfortable at today of like, okay, because there's still a lot of synergy as we move towards the start of the new year and finalizing the strategic plan. Y'all will be a part of that presentation, that sort of, you know, approval process of, hey, here's what 24, 25 look like for us. I really like the idea of being an experienced library. When we went to Provo, one of the very first things we met with Carla Gordon at Provo, their director, and within 15 seconds of being there, they let us know that they were a popular lending library, which means they didn't go for the breadth of collection. They were going to have 10 copies of whatever the most popular book was, and that's who they were. Now, I don't think that's the right choice for Orem for a lot of reasons, but they knew who they were, and so their spending decisions and staffing decisions and programming decisions, they knew what they were about, and I love that. And as I thought about what we've been about and what our people are about, I think the experience of library, that's programming, that's being here, that's the the deep like nostalgia and emotional connection to the library. It's not about having the thing that you can get and leave. It's about being a part of us and being in our facility. And so rather than saying how do we transact library items, how do we experience a library together? And so I think it goes into what Linda shared with We Do Library, that because it's our programming, it's our story times, it is our collection development, absolutely, but it's getting you to it and creating it. It's our staff not just being at a desk and answering questions, but creating that spark and that relationship with you, so that it's a journey together through finding new books. And you know, I met with one of our reference librarians, and she had made a recommendation off of what her niece was reading for my 9-year-old. And I now feel the moral obligation to report back to her on how that is going, because it's like we made that connection. So now we are talking Warrior Cats, the children's YA fantasy saga of warrior kittens, and that's what we talk about every time. But we have made that connection, and I think a lot of our residents do the same. So that was number one. Was our short answer is we want to focus on being an experienced library. Come and be with us and be here. Number two, we've talked a lot about our reference and our full-time, not just our reference, our full-time staff, and what will help them feel self-actualized and feel valued, what takes their very unique skill set, their education, and maximizes it for our residents. And so we've talked about a three-pronged approach to each of our staff. Number one, they will have some of their time dedicated to collection development, curation, buying books, reading books, making materials, and making sure that they are here. Number two, every single one of them, not just our programming staff that are in outreach that run our summer reading program, but every single staff will be involved in programming or collection access. Now, programming in the library world is maybe a more specific meaning. You run the summer reading program or you do the escape rooms. But in this context, it means creating the relationship or getting it to the residents. And so maybe our catalogers, they're not going to be up on stage leading a discussion, but they would be running our blogs to say, let me help you find out more about these things. Our makerspace would be partnering up with our seniors at the senior center to say, we're going to get them over here every other Thursday to do these sewing activities or these crafts. So it's programming to say, we have this and we're going to pull you in. And so we want every one of our employees, our full-time employees, to be a programming or collection access tour guide and go from there. And point number three then is the librarianship work that they will do. And so if they're on reference, if they're on their tech services desk, if they're in a customer service role, that will be a part of every single person's job. And so every full-time employee will be a part of those three things to help us, realize our motto and our mission statement and to be an experienced library. The last thing that I took away from a lot of these is service point success. Right now, in some ways, our library is designed from a staff perspective a little bit. And so when you go to talk to a staff member at the library, you don't know if you're talking to a circulation staff or a reference staff or a tech services staff. And we're going to maybe tweak and rearrange our cross-training and any service point that is out front. They're going to be able to get you the answer that they need. So that requires new training and new information. But a lot of these other libraries that we saw, they didn't have some of the harder lines between types of staff that we do. They trained them so that when a resident found a librarian staff, they would know and be able to get them the answer. And so it's a model that I'm really excited about because our residents will get the answer they need a lot quicker. Right now we have probably too many questions that go to the wrong person, so they forward them to the full-time staff over that, and that voicemail can sit in an office an entire weekend. It can sit overnight, when really if we change our training model, they will leave with what they needed quicker. So those were my big things from our strategic plan that we're going to work with our staff on, that we will address and use the NGT study and some of these tours to look at staffing tweaks or assignment and training changes as we move staff around, as we fill vacancies. We can't just say they're a great reference librarian, but they don't like talking to people. That doesn't work anymore because everyone programs and everyone creates access to the collection. So we're going to have that in mind as we are hiring a children's librarian, associate librarian right now. We will ask them both about their children's collection knowledge and their plans to connect children and families to the books that we have here. So any questions on that before I jump through some of our tour photos and some of the ideas and takeaways we had?
Not really questions, but I would just, I guess, comment is, I think I look at the libraries, like Orem's living room, you know, people do come here and you feel, I don't know, if you love books, you just feel peace when you're surrounded by them. But, and just as an anecdote, also, I have a friend whose father died a year or so ago, and her husband wisely just brought her here to the library where she could kind of decompress and process the things that had happened and stuff. And this was her comfort spot, so just share that. It's our Orem's living room, it's right over there.
I love that. I love being and that feeling here. It to me is an important part of who we are and what we do. I love that. Thank you.
There's the flip side where you mentioned being a comforting place for people who love books. It can be an alienating place for someone who's intimidated by the reading. And so there's got to be another way of connection, right? Like it could be the song that's playing in the library. I love walking downstairs in the media space because I want to know what they're playing music-wise. And I just want to hear it and I'm like, oh yeah, like I haven't heard this one in a while, or I don't know who this is. I was thinking about today, we went over a pop song that uses Pop Bell's canon as its underlying message, right? So as we were looking at it, I was like, it's different, so it challenges them, but it's familiar, so they're comfortable. So it's kind of a hard balance to strike, but you've got to be able to have whoever walks through that door find some connection in order to feel that comfort.
You know, you mentioned, I love, I think we found our first guest for the podcast. But what we talked about the programming of our media library, James, and the idea would be like, you know, this podcast that takes you through an album or a song or something like that and creates that, you know, it's not academic. We're not like here like to test them afterwards, but to create the connection and dive into that. And so, you know, it's something we can put out on the website or through our podcast app and to create that connection. So even if they don't get all the way here, they have that to pull them in. And so, you know, if you, for real, we'd love to connect you with James and talk these types of songs, or as you have an album, you know, seminal albums of the 80s, or, you know, Buffy and its cultural impact on the word Google, you know, whatever it is, that's exactly what we want to get, is a connection to the material, not just the material itself.
And I like the We Do Library because when I leave the library, I want to leave either my mind is spinning because I learned something I didn't know, or I'm holding material that might do that when I get home. So I'm excited, or my mind's thinking. And that's kind of like a successful trip to the library. So like it's familiar, but it's also a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenging environment. And that difficult balance that you're trying to head into. And I think you're on the right track.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Well, again, like I mentioned, our to-do list, our possibility list is long. And we were in the ideation, no bad ideas phase. We will now take these into the strategic plan. We'll work with our architect for the facilities master plan and say, what needs to happen now? What's essential? What's a priority? What do we want to do and what do we want to be? We'll talk to our staff. But I picked a few of these here that I thought were fun things. First off is the family study rooms. Any of y'all familiar with these? This was, I think this one's at UB, or this one might be the BYU one. There are a series of study rooms around a shared play space. And so if you are a parent with a child that needs to work, you can be in a semi-private study room. You've got glass walls on two sides, but it's open to the middle. You have a table to work at, and you have a play area. They had both a playpen, fully surrounded for probably like the 0 to 18 month, and then they had a little toy jungle gym in the middle for maybe a little bit older. And then on the walls in their study room, they had a bunch of manipulatable interactives that are on the wall. So a parent that needs to get some stuff done with a child that needs to get that energy out is able to do that. Obviously, as a Parks and Rec professional, I got beyond excited about this to say what we do is like this. You know, they are two separate departments, but all I'm saying is both the departments' visions smack dab on top of each other. It's a living room or a backyard, depending on what you need today. So I love this idea. I thought that was really exciting, and you consider Family City USA this feels in line with a lot of what our residents might be looking for here, a hybrid study, work, reading, but still family play space. Obviously in the right area, we're not gonna drop this in the middle of adult reference or something like this, but maybe up in our upstairs north wing, that would make sense. I like these were semi-private study spaces. We spent a lot of, square footage is expensive, and every table at the college libraries, whether it was designed for 8 people or 1 person, had 1 person at it. And so they could get a lot farther by making semi-private study spaces with glass partitions on a couple sides that was a little bit more private, but not all of the walls and the soundproofing and all of this expense to create a study space. You could get 90% of what that person needed for 10% of the cost if you just put up partitions or something like that. Maps is a collection that in the last 20 years of the internet has plummeted in use, but they're beautiful. Maybe we need to stop treating maps as a collection item and more as an art or an interactive piece. Maker spaces featured heavily in every single library that we went to. This was at one of the universities, and so this is more than we need, but like there's thousands of cameras on this ball, and you put your thing in and it 3D maps it and turns it into 3D printing. Great for a university, a bit much for us. But every single place leaned into the makerspace idea that you can come and create and learn a skill and do something at the library or learn the skill and take it home with you.
So how do you decide, is there programming around your makerspace?
Currently?
Yeah, I guess I'm just brainstorming here thinking, but like today I have a Cricut, right?
Yeah.
I haven't used it for 10 years. My daughter wanted me to use it to make this sign. I could not remember how to do it. And I just thought, wow, I'd love if I had just like a 1-hour class to just go over the basics of how to do this.
We have a Cricut expert.
Do you?
You can come on down and learn and do it.
Well, and I just wonder, would you advertise a class like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We haven't done we do classes, workshops and whatnot.
Awesome.
Yeah, creating access to the content we already have here. We need to help those that might be interested in that know about it.
And then when you said that about the seniors thing, it's so funny, I stumbled across this YouTube video from a guy who was teaching seniors how to use their iPhone. And it was so cute. And I learned from it, I guess I'm kind of a senior, but I don't know, just directing people, let us help you find things to teach you.
We have 3,500
I know
people that are
you-
members at that senior center right there.
Yeah,
And we have a library right here,
And-
and it just seems like we could,
and you totally have the expertise here, so let's just.
and we have time and availability at 9 a.m. on a Thursday when the seniors are ready to rock and roll. So we're, again, bringing together, creating that access. We have a bus, we'll pull them over, we'll call it good.
Okay.
Impact messaging. We have a great brand as a city, and we have done a lot of work with the guide and the design. We have a lot of valuable wall space in there. As we look at the end caps of our shelves, as we look at our signage, I think we have a chance to say, let's get that look and feel imprinted on our library, so when you come in, you know where you're at, you know what you want to do, and it is consistent to the branding of the city. I think that's a great chance for us. This is Provo. They do seasonal shelving, and so they will take out maybe their entire Christmas collection of DVDs and books, and they'll put them in storage, or where they don't have to spread them out, and then they'll pull them all out November 1st or October 15th, and do that, so they can have more collection in their ownership without having to sacrifice year-round. And so I thought that was an interesting idea. You can have some seasonal collections that could go out. We saw a lot of places that played with stack height. If you go into specifically our south wing, there's a lot of height there, which maximizes our collection, but you can't see and you can't access it, and a lot of it is spine out. We saw a lot of libraries, specifically Springville was impactful to me. They sacrificed total shelving capacity to put buckets, not buckets, but flippable buckets for the youngest readers, for the board books. So when you go, they're 2 years old, they don't care about the Dewey Decimal System. They just want to get in there and see what they like. And so that's an inefficient way of storing the books, but they said their circulation went up 70% when they did that, because the kids could go and touch and access it. And so I don't think we need to do that for all of our collections. We can't afford with our square footage to lose that much space, but maybe in some places we could. We saw a lot of immersive theming, and so when you go to have an experience, whether it's a music experience, we want you to feel like you're in a record store, or a place of comfort where you have some semi-privacy and you're comfortable reading and being, to a group collaboration, there's some ways that we can make it an immersive experience with a little bit of theming. We saw Spanish Fork had each of their study rooms themed after Pemberley or the Shire or something like that to make it a little bit fun when you're in that space. This is one of my favorites. We have Linda and her team, our tech services team, and they are sequestered in back rooms right now, sort of across the library, doing the work of librarians. We saw Spanish Fork put windows, and Salt Lake County put windows so people could watch the book sorters and the book bins and the collection maintenance and say, come watch us be librarians. We're doing library, why don't you come watch us do it? So how do we get them as a spectacle, part of the library experience? We saw several libraries that went to a bullpen style. I know this picture doesn't do it justice, but back behind their main desk, all of their tech services are in one open shared space. And so as they look at the life of the book, from acquisitions and acquiring the book, to collection maintenance and labeling and covering the book, to checking out or getting the book onto the shelf through shelving and pages, to their circulation when it comes back in through their book drops, that team is working together in an open, collaborative environment. Right now, we're maybe a little bit spread out. I love this, and their staff seem to find a lot of efficiency and energy in working together as a bigger team in a bullpen environment. Those are them, of what we included here. Again, hundreds of others, great ideas, big ideas, small ideas. And it's been fascinating to hear from our Makerspace associate librarian provide his perspective, and our shelving associate provide her perspective, and then we're able to sort of balance all this out. So it's been a fun exercise. My guess is we plan to talk to our library staff internally on December 15th or 13th to sort of let them know what our anticipated strategic plan is. At our next LAC, we'd like to present that to y'all. A little bit more concrete, a little bit more specific, but this is the direction, this is the information we've received and some of the initial feelings and ideas that we've had. So I wanted to get that in front of y'all today. Any other thoughts, questions, feedback for our strategic plan and looking forward to 24, 25?
Well, the one I really thought about was impact messaging. No offense, but Orem Library is just kind of lost in the, I think that's an important thing. I didn't even realize it wasn't there until I went, well, yeah. So I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, we looked at our light poles out in the parking lot to get those little banners and flags and pull you into our front entrance.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
One of my favorites is our Dreamer, the name of our astronaut there on the west wall. What a beautiful image, and I love the idea of massive art. And so part of me is like, how do we multiply that and pick out a couple of other impact spots that really pull you in with some banners and some consistent signage? I love that. Thank you, Lorraine.
I think we've always relied on the stained glass windows, which
True.
right?
They are.
But I like what you're saying.
Yeah.
And drawn into
Yeah.
those stained glass windows, because
Yeah.
those are one of a kind, iconic.
They are. They are.
But
They're
let's send them on in.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all I have today. Thank you for your time and your ideas and feedback.
Great.
Thank you, Bryce. Next, we'll move on to Mike, Reeves and Shusterman.
Awesome. Had a little teaser discussion before we started on some of the programs. That's all good. But just wanted to give you a recap on some of the events since we last met. We've had some big ones. The one that we just talked about, the Eclipse Party, with over 1,600 people out there in the park. We had a magic show at Jason Fun. We had donuts. We gave away 3D glasses. That won't help you watch the Eclipse glasses. And 800 pair of Eclipse glasses were given away. And I don't know, a couple hundred donuts. We were maybe short on donuts. Next Eclipse, we'll do better on donuts. But everybody had a good time, great turnout. Yeah, the Eclipse is a great one. So thank you, son, for still doing that. Neal Shusterman, we had popular YA teen author Neal Shusterman visit. This is a program that has been 4 years in the trying.
That's on the schedule.
We had him booked pre-COVID, and
Oh.
then the pandemic kind of derailed that a little bit, his travel plans and everything. And since then, we've had a couple of reschedules that haven't worked out. But he finally came this last month, and that was great. Great advertising, great turnout. We had over 250 people show up. We provided, as part of the program, we purchased 320 copies of his newest graphic novel, Courage to Dream, to give away to the public who came to that program. Originally, we kind of limited it to families because we wanted, because he was signing the copies too. And so he would sign those. He did a signing for other people, or other titles that, personal copies that people brought. So that was kind of a big deal because Neal Shusterman, award-winning author, is a big deal, and that was great. The Orem Reads series that we had, where we read, I think we talked a little bit about what that was with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein last time, where we choose a title and then we base a series of programs around that title. And this year it was kind of like more of the same, but a little bit different format in terms of the types of programs that we were doing, kind of speaking to experience design, some of the space that we're looking at. So the first one, we kicked it off with a presentation of the actual title, An Evening with Mary Shelley. And that was a theater in the round type performance that we did on the stage in Library Hall, which we had never done before. We'd always have people out in the seats, where they belong. But we put our risers up and loaded the seats and kind of rounded it up, made a cool theater in the round. And for the kickoff for that, we had over 140 people attend that, which was far more than we have had in the past for a Orem Reads kickoff event, and more than we expected. And we also included throughout that series a new type of program called Snack and Chat, where it's basically like exactly what it sounds like. We provide some snacks and you come and you chat about the book. So thinking of this series, Orem Reads, as like book club, where we pick the title, but then you have like multiple programs going along, or chances to talk and meet as you're reading it, rather than just kind of all gathering at the end and talking about what you thought of the book.
What's the demographic for that? The age?
The age was geared more towards like teen and adults, just because Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, classic novel.
Are you gonna change that up every month, or are you, I guess, I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I have young adult children,
Yeah.
right, and it's really hard. I keep hearing all the time, so hard to meet people, so hard to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got junior and teen book clubs and programs for that. The Orem Reads has traditionally been more of an adult program series, because most of our programming actually leans toward the younger. And so feedback was that the parents of the children coming to these younger programs were like, well, we want something to, this is cool, you did a Harry Potter program for kids. And they're like, well, I like Harry Potter, I'd like to come and chat with, my neighbor. And so that's sort of what we were doing here, although many families came to, I believe, the kickoff. But we had a book tasting, and I am not super clear on what that was. I missed that one. But there was food involved, and I think the message to take away from this year's Orem Reads was that if you provide food, they will come.
The book tasting was if you liked this component of Frankenstein, you might want to try this. If you like other Gothic horror, you might want to try this. If you like books about doctors, you might like this. And so sort of the idea was, what are you reading next?
Read alikes. There was food involved that they brought. That was kind of the, it wasn't a bait and switch necessarily. They actually provided food. But yeah, some read alike components and recommendations. So The overall attendance that we had, right around 400. We gave out 200 copies of Frankenstein to the public to keep, to read. We used, I think we mentioned Beanstack is the program that we have for people to sign up and participate in reading challenges. We use that for our summer reading program. We used it for this and had over 125 people sign up with that, with 45 completions, which means they signed up and they completed the book and logged it. Anyway, it's just annoying. But the takeaway was that these new types of, the feedback that we had from the public who attended all of these, which there were quite a few. By the end, there were some that were like, oh my gosh, this is the last Frankenstein program, and so we're kind of sad. But they knew each other. There were like 20 or 25 of them that were kind of regulars throughout the whole series that would come, and they got to know each other. They got to know the librarians. They, developing these relationships and these experiences. And taking that away. And so we learned a lot in terms of like the types of programs that we would love to have in the future, include food, theater in the rounds, and multiple chances to chat with librarians and community about titles. So book group type, but more often, more casual in a public setting, things like that. So yeah, we're looking at repeating this type of series where Orem Reads has traditionally just been like a fall, it's an October event. We may use this model, this format for future programs throughout the year. So that's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone have anything to contribute?
I'm curious about the taste the book or whatever it was.
Yeah.
What was it called?
The book tasting?
The book tasting.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the series Breaking Bad until it was almost over. And the only reason I started was because I was listening to NPR and they played a quote from the show.
Yeah.
And I heard it and I thought, I need to watch this. Like it was intriguing. So like when I see like staff recommendations of books and I'm just looking at them, I still have a hard time grabbing one. But if there was like a quote or a piece of media from that, where I could sit down and have someone be like, oh, I really like this part of it. And it just helped me open my mind, be like, I should take a look at
Little
those.
samples or excerpts.
Little samples.
That part, like you're committed to no bait and switch, but I think he's asking for better bait.
Yeah.
And we can
Any
do
bait,
that.
exactly. You get something juicy on your little line, pull them right in.
Like I said, I want to leave the library with my mind spinning or excited for what I'm doing with me. And if I can get more of that tasting when I'm here, I'm into it.
Cool.
Thank you, Mike. Next, Linda, collection policy.
Okay, so part of our collection policy is closed stacks and restricted designations in the library.
Linda, can I jump in really quick?
Yeah.
And set the stage? Did everybody have a chance to look at, or did you receive this closed stack? Linda is part of her job as Technical Services Division Manager is over collection development,
Yeah.
which is a sometimes really tricky and tenuous process because we want to be very fair and equitable and very forthcoming with what we're doing as a staff. We had an opportunity with y'all earlier this year to go through our policies surrounding displays. And again, the goal was to write a policy in a very clear way that has the right people in charge of the right parts of it, and we're able to receive feedback and do all of that. And so as she's going through this is not in response to anything that has happened. There is no major changes to the mechanisms we're using, but we're going through each of our policies to be very clear and very transparent with what we do and how we handle certain situations. And so that is why we're presenting on it today. She's done a great job. There is no other side of the half of the story or what's happening, but while she's going through a very tricky policy, she's done a great job with clarity of language. We're doing this with everything that we do so that we can try to be ahead of anything that might pop up.
Yeah, one of the collection developers came to me and asked about a book. And I said, well, let's look at this policy, because my collections that I purchased for, I never really had to deal with this until a few months ago when I got into this position. And so when I looked at the previous policy and it was talking about what would be in closed stacks, it was just giving examples, like oversized items, art books, local interest, anatomy books, core binding books, pop-up books. And I thought, okay, well, that's a random list. Like,
Yeah.
what, but why? I want to know why that book is in closed stacks. And so then I went into the closed stacks and started reviewing the items. And some of them I could not figure out why they were in closed stacks. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. And I said, well, I want it very clear with my collection developers as to what the reasoning would be as to why we would put something in closed stacks and why we would label something restricted. And so this is what you can, it links on your digital, the digital part that you got to the current policy, and then you also have the physical copy of what I changed. And mostly what I changed is clarification as to why the book is in there. Not random examples of what the books are, but why. And so fragility, like, this would be a pop-up book. And you will see some pop-up books still in closed stacks in children's because we just can't mend them. And now the policy is that we don't buy them, but there's still some that are in them. If it's non-replaceable, sometimes there's a handful of historical books that we keep in closed stacks just because there is local interest in that item, but it's the only copy. Some of the books are kept in closed stacks because there's a very high probability for theft. An example of this would be the Dungeons and Dragons manuals. We were having those stolen a lot, and I think they're about $100.
Yeah,
They're costly, and so this was just a way to make the patron know, like, we know you took this, all right?
They're on the radar.
Yeah, and also kind of a side note to this, anytime that you put something in closed stacks, remember we talked about wanting to do things to set up the library to provide access. So we recognize by having closed stacks that we are creating a barrier for the patron to get to something that they need or are interested in. So there has to be a very good reason why we would do that. Does that make sense? And then the last,
Wait, could you define that barrier, just so people understand that?
the barrier is that you would find a dummy on the shelf and you would take that to the reference desk or service desk and you would ask them to go get it out of closed stacks for you. So you can't just grab the book off the shelf, you have to actually go request it. And in some cases, depending on what people were asking for, it can also be a very embarrassing request. And we don't want the patrons to not have access to medical information because they don't want to ask for it. So we need to be very sensitive to that as well.
Linda jump in really quick, had talked a little bit about we no longer buy something that we know, that we would no longer buy a pop-up book that we know we'd have to immediately put into closed stacks. And so I think a lot of this policy focuses on what we have now, and as we understand this policy, I think it gives us good guidance for future collection development.
Yeah.
If we want to have a collection that we have access for our residents to, and even if it's a great book that would fall into one of these, if we immediately have that barrier to it, is that really the best value for our residents to go through? And sometimes it is, yes, that could definitely happen. But I think it is a policy that will be managing a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller collection.
Yes, and since we've done this and I've done training on it, I still have a few collection developers that have more books in it that are just finishing up some of it. A lot of it actually got weeded, because another thing that happens when we put it in closed stacks is the collection developer and the shelf maintenance don't see it. And so I'm sure they loved me because I had the stacks people bring them carts, and I told them this is the criteria, and this is what I want you to specifically do. Because they were I gave them the reasons why they would choose to keep something in closed stacks or put something in closed stacks. And then my expectation is in our iOS system that there is a note made why it's there. Because I, as the manager over all those collection developers, I don't know what a librarian in 20 years, why she decided to put that in there. And I said, well, I need to have a policy that 20 years from now, they know why you made that decision. And plus, I just need to know why you made that decision. I think that there's clarity in that. So another reason that we could do it is if there's if there has been vandalism to the book, and this does happen to more often than you think. Some people are just offended by a cover or something, and so a book is shoved in a corner, and basically it's ruined. And so it has to be repurchased. So in some cases, we recognize that there might be a risk. And then there is also a content. And I wanted to make sure that any book that we had put in to close stacks, okay, so I'm gonna wait, let me stop there, I wanna get to risk. So when we went through training of those first 4, some of those I really discouraged the initial purchase of in the first place. Like there's literally a book about this thick, this thick. It is an art book, it's absolutely beautiful. I think it's Da Vinci, can't remember. Anyway, it's $200, and I can't for the life of me figure out why the collection developer bought it. I think it was a patron request. And they may not have been aware, like they may have said, oh yeah, go ahead and purchase it, not realizing what the cost is. And so again, we do the trainings, like, when you purchase a book like that, and we have to put it in closed stacks, 1, we've just spent a lot of money, and 2, we put it in a place that again, lacks access. And so the book is now on the stacks, because I can't hide it, because I want as many people to have access to it. But those books they don't circulate as well. I had my stacks manager go around to all the books that, the ones that are at the bottom, those really big, I call them coffee table books. I don't really even consider them circulatable books. And I basically told the collection developers, you better have a darn good reason for purchasing this. You know what I mean? So we go over these things with curation and making thoughtful decisions on those 4 things. Because ideally we do want to have it available to the patrons. Then we talked about putting something in closed stacks for content. And I wanted, again, clarification on this. And this is pretty clear for movies, because we can go by the motion picture's rating of it, right? It's clear on video games, because there's a rating. There's not for books. So this gets tricky, because we're balancing the freedom to read and have access to information. We're balancing what are we buying, where's the need, and all of those things, right? And so just having clarity of what would actually be put in closed stacks. And so as I reviewed the material, we decided that, for one thing, if it's in closed stacks, if it's there for content, it has to have restricted, so that anybody that's checking it out is over 18. Because we do the same thing with our rated R movies. So just making sure it's written and that they're trained and that we're consistent in doing it this way. So that was my rabbit hole.
So our
All
rated,
because one of the collection developers said, where should I put this?
R-rated movies, most of them are gonna be on the shelf, but they're still
Yes.
restricted. So they can be on the shelf because the kid
And that was-
can't pick them
I
up and
can't
see.
flip through pages.
Now, that's not in the policy, but that is in the training.
Yeah,
Because in my training with them, say, well, yes, this is a restricted item, but because the patron cannot see the content,
right,
there's no need to put it in a closed stack.
right, okay.
However, with a book, it's different. And so we, have a discussion about that. One of the examples, and it was kind of interesting to go to some of the other libraries to see how they handle this as well. One of the books that we have is entitled The Rape of Nanking. It has some very graphic pictures in it. Now, the way that that book has the graphic pictures in one edition of the book is that the pictures are in the middle. So you could read the book without ever looking at the pictures. Does that make sense?
They're just in the little section.
They're in that section. Now, there's another copy of the book that is larger, that the text is next to the pictures. So the layout is different. And so with that collection developer, we made the decision that the one that the patron can read, you know what I mean, we'll put in open stacks. But the one that has the larger, just, you know what I mean, that you can't read the book, we put that one in closed stacks. And these are hard choices. And so that's why we have a whole process and we work with the collection developers to, and they work together with each other really well too, to make the decisions. And this has been a really good process, I think. One, because the policy is clear. Two, we got a lot of books weeded and back on open stacks. Because they've been in quote, it's like, why is this here? It just doesn't make sense. And some of the books that even were fragile but not circulating, we said, well, let's just get them out in open stacks. I mean, if 5 people check them out and then the book's done, at least 5 people got to use the item. I mean, we keep them in closed stacks, nobody gets it, right?
It's the fine china.
Yeah, exactly. It's nothing new.
It is, it's like that.
We
Yeah,
might buy more paper products in the future rather than the fine china.
yes,
But at
exactly.
least the fine china that we already have in the collection,
Bring it out.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it was good for them to each kind of go through and have to make these decisions and say, you know what, yeah, this hasn't circulated more than twice. I'm just gonna put it out, and, you know what I mean? And I feel like in the end, when you look at a policy for closed stacks, it sounds like it's prohibiting, but I feel like actually the clarity that we did provided more access.
Question, just out of curiosity, how many books do you have in the closed stack, approximately?
Oh, well, see, now I have to go look.
Well,
I would say there was probably maybe
This is not a significant percentage point of our collection.
75?
okay,
Yeah.
Okay,
Out of
done.
300,000.
yeah,
And-
that's not huge, yeah, I just
No,
wanted
it's a
to.
very few
Okay,
books.
that's why I kind of just wanted to.
And like I said, probably half of them were weeded or put back on the shelves.
And
And,
I think
And I like that.
we are interested in
We're
materials
comfortable
staying
with that.
on the shelves.
yeah,
That is, the goal is not to have a larger closed stack. The
Right.
goal is if we can justify buying it and it makes sense and we need to have it in a collection, then it needs to be on the open shelves, except for 75 out of 300,000 very rare exceptions.
yes. And my goal also is to make sure that the collection developers are trained in their purchases going forward and trained in how to use this. And I wanted to make sure that the policy was transparent. So that people that read our collection policy know exactly what we do.
So I will, I introed as well as, and I'll exit strategy the conversation. If you want to take a look at this policy and go through and let us know what questions you have, we can put a chance to provide that feedback between this meeting and the next meeting. And as we're able to hear that feedback from y'all, we can put that on here just for a final wrap up in our January meeting. Is that right, Sean? And go from there. So again, nothing major has sparked this conversation. We want clarity and we want to feel transparent. We look to our policies to provide direction to our staff and clarity to our residents, and to make sure that we are providing as much access as possible to our residents in a way that works for our library. I think on the, you mentioned the polls that we feel, like we talked about with displays and other materials, it can be used as a sword and a shield, and our goal here is not to wade into that, but rather to say, we've communicated what we're doing, and we trust our collection developers, and we have these great channels to receive the feedback from users and readers to constantly tweak and improve where we can.
And be consistent.
Any more, Linda?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Sorry, that was probably the most boring part to me, and I saved it for the end.
Well,
I
I
was like,
tried,
oh,
I
great.
sped read it.
The fun events, the exciting pictures, and policy.
Oh, I appreciate clarification.
Me too.
I will read the entire thing.
And we would love your feedback. Yeah, that's what we want.
Updates, any updates that we need to move on? Other?
That's the chance for y'all, if there are updates
Any
and
other
other.
comments, updates? Anyone else? Okay, do we have a move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn. Motion
Second?
to adjourn.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second or, will you second it?
Yeah, but I seconded the
Oh,
starting.
I can't second anything, so.
Okay, go.
You're gonna do all the second.
There's only the three of us that can say anything.
I'm not really a member, so I don't.
Okay, well, I.
Okay, y'all have a wonderful, safe
Thank
holiday.
you.
Come enjoy lots of shows at Library Hall, and otherwise, we'll see y'all in January.
And good job,
Thank you, thanks for being here.
good job.
Appreciate each of y'all.
Yeah, thank you for your support. We appreciate it.